My brother called me the day after our father's funeral and told me not to worry about the money. That's almost word for word what he said. "Don't worry about it, Diane. I'll handle everything." And I remember thinking, okay, he's the oldest. He offered. Dad trusted him. I'll let him handle it. That was the decision that almost cost me $112,000. My father's name was Gerald. He worked for 31 years as a civil engineer for the county, drove the same truck for 14 of those years, and never once talked about money at the dinner table. Not because there wasn't any, because he didn't think it was polite. He grew up poor in eastern Tennessee, and he never stopped being careful, even after the careful living had turned into something real. Investment accounts, a savings bond portfolio he'd been building since 1987, a modest life insurance policy, a house that was paid off in 2009. When he died in October, a heart attack, no warning, a Tuesday morning, we found out the estate was worth just over $340,000. My brother Marcus is 3 years older than me. We grew up sharing a bathroom and fighting over the remote, and not much else. We weren't enemies, we just weren't close. He moved to Charlotte after college, built a career in commercial real estate, married a woman named Patrice who I'd met maybe 6 times at family holidays. He called our parents on Sundays, visited at Christmas, sent a card on their birthdays. I was the one who drove my mother to her chemo appointments in 2019. I was the one who flew home 4 times in 1 year when my father's back surgery kept getting complicated. I was the one sitting in the ICU waiting room on that Tuesday in October when the doctor came out and told me they'd done everything they could. Marcus got there 8 hours later. He walked in, hugged me, cried in the parking lot, and then, I'm not exaggerating here, within 48 hours, he was asking questions about probate. I didn't think anything of it. He was named executor in my father's will. That was Dad's choice, and I respected it. I figured Marcus just wanted to do things right. What I didn't know was that the investment accounts, a brokerage account and 2 IRAs, had a combined value of $112,000 at the time of Dad's death. And I didn't know that those accounts didn't have updated beneficiary designations. My mother had passed 2 years earlier. No one had thought to update them after she died. That left them as part of the estate, which meant they went through probate, which meant Marcus, as executor, had full access. The first thing I noticed was that he stopped answering my calls, not all at once, gradually. A missed call here, a text that took 3 days to get a response. I told myself he was busy. I told myself grief does strange things. I told myself we'd both get through this and figure out the estate on the other side. In December, about 6 weeks after the funeral, I asked him directly, "Where are we with the accounts?" He said he was still working with the estate attorney. He said these things take time. He said, and I remember this exactly, Dad had more going on financially than either of us realized. I'm sorting it out. I took that to mean complexity. I didn't take it to mean he'd already started moving money. I should have asked more questions, but I didn't know yet what I was looking for. I trusted the process. I trusted him. I stopped trusting both in February. I didn't go to the bank looking for anything specific. I want to be clear about that. I went because I needed a copy of my father's death certificate notarized for a separate insurance matter, and the branch near my house was the same one my father had used for 40 years. The branch manager, a woman named Sandra, had known my father since before I was born. She came out from behind the desk when she saw me, held both my hands, told me how sorry she was. We talked for a few minutes. I thanked her. And then, almost as an afterthought, she asked how the estate was coming along. I said slowly. She nodded. She said she hoped things were getting straightened out, especially after... and then she stopped herself. I asked her what she meant. She looked uncomfortable. She said she probably shouldn't say anything, that Marcus had been in several times, and she assumed I was already aware of everything. I told her I wasn't. The coffee I'd brought in with me was sitting on the edge of her desk. I remember staring at the lid while she talked, the little plastic tab you fold back. I just kept staring at it. She told me that in the 6 weeks following my father's death, Marcus had transferred $78,000 out of the brokerage account into a new account he'd opened in his name alone. He'd come in twice in person. He'd been polite. He'd had all the executor paperwork. Everything looked legitimate on the surface. She'd had no reason to flag it. $78,000 out of an account that held $112,000 at the time of our father's death. I sat in my car in that parking lot for a long time, long enough that the coffee went cold and I didn't notice. I kept running the numbers. $112,000 in the account, $78,000 moved. That left $34,000. And Marcus had told me to my face, that he was still sorting out the finances. That Dad had more going on than either of them realized. He wasn't sorting it out. He was taking it. That was when the memories started rearranging themselves. I thought about Thanksgiving, 2 years before Dad died. Marcus had shown up and spent half the meal talking to our father in the kitchen. I'd assumed they were catching up. I thought about the Sunday phone calls, how Marcus had started calling more frequently in the last year of Dad's life, sometimes twice a week. I'd thought he was being a good son, making up for lost time. I'd even said that to a friend. Marcus has really stepped up. I thought about a conversation I'd had with my father about 6 months before he died. He'd mentioned that Marcus had been helping him look into some financial planning. I didn't ask what that meant. I figured it was investment advice. My father was 71. It seemed responsible. Now I wondered if that financial planning had involved being added to accounts, being positioned as the person who handled things. I thought about every time I'd driven to that house, every appointment I'd scheduled, every phone call I'd taken at 11 p.m. because my father couldn't sleep and didn't want to wake Marcus up in Charlotte. He got the executor role. I got the phone calls at midnight. He got $78,000. I got the parking lot outside that bank. I called the estate attorney's office that afternoon. I introduced myself as Gerald's daughter and co-beneficiary of the estate. The paralegal was polite. She pulled up the file. She confirmed that, yes, they were working with Marcus as executor. She also, very carefully, told me that no formal estate accounting had been filed yet, that no distributions had been authorized, that any transfers made from estate assets before authorization would need to be disclosed and could be subject to review. I asked her how quickly I could get an appointment. She said Thursday. I said I'd be there. I want to tell you exactly what I did after I hung up that phone. I went home. I made a list. Not an emotional list. Not a, here's everything Marcus has ever done wrong list. A document list. What existed. What I could get copies of. What I needed someone else to produce. I wrote down death certificate, will, original account statements, beneficiary designation records, any documents Marcus had signed as executor, the transfer records Sandra had described. I stopped crying somewhere around item 4. I remember noticing that, like a switch flipped. Crying wasn't going to get that money back. A paper trail was. I met with the estate attorney Thursday morning. I brought everything I had. I told her what Sandra had told me. She didn't look surprised, which told me this wasn't the first time she'd seen something like this. She explained that as a named beneficiary of the estate, I had legal standing to request a full accounting. She said that transfers made before probate authorization, particularly transfers into a personal account, were a serious problem. She used the phrase, breach of fiduciary duty. She said it quietly, like she'd said it many times before. She filed a petition for formal probate accounting the following week. Marcus called me 3 days after the filing. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I let that one go too. The third time, I picked up. He didn't yell. He didn't apologize. He said, and this is the line I keep coming back to, "I was managing Dad's assets. That's what executors do." That's it. That's what he said. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "let me explain," just a calm, matter-of-fact statement, like he'd rehearsed it. I told him his attorney would be hearing from ours. The accounting process took 4 months. What it revealed was more organized than I'd expected. Marcus hadn't acted impulsively. The transfers had been structured in specific amounts over specific dates. He'd opened the personal account 11 days after the funeral. He'd made the first transfer on day 14, the second on day 31. He'd left enough in the original account that a casual glance wouldn't raise immediate questions. He'd clearly thought about how this would look. What he hadn't thought about was Sandra, or the fact that I'd need a notarized death certificate, or that I'd walk into that branch and she'd look at me with that expression, the one that said she thought I already knew. The probate court ordered full repayment of the $78,000 with interest. Marcus was removed as executor. A successor was appointed. The estate was properly administered, and the remaining assets, including what Marcus had taken, were distributed equally between us, as the will had intended. He paid back every dollar, not because he wanted to, because he had no other option once the records were in front of a judge. I used my share to pay off my car and put the rest into a savings account I opened in my own name. I didn't do anything dramatic with it. I didn't need to. What Marcus took from me wasn't just money. It was the assumption that grief makes people honest, that family, even complicated family, operates inside some basic limit. I'd believed that, even with everything, even after all the missed calls and the Sunday check-ins, and the way he showed up 8 hours late and then started asking about probate before I'd even eaten a real meal. I'd still believed it. I don't anymore. There's a coffee shop near that bank branch. I drive past it sometimes on my way to work. I don't stop in, but every time I pass it, I think about sitting in that parking lot with the cold coffee and the plastic tab on the lid, and the way everything I thought I understood about my brother rearranged itself in about 4 minutes. He had every number memorized, every transfer date, every account balance. He knew exactly what he was doing. He just didn't know I'd already talked to the bank. If you've ever been the one who stayed quiet, who kept everything together while no one noticed, I hope this story felt like it was for you. If it did, subscribe. We post new stories every week. And if someone in your life needs to hear this one, send it to them. I'm curious, who came to mind while you were watching this? Tell me in the comments.